Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Just watching as people enter the webinar, and we'll get started in just a moment. I see that people are still entering the webinar, but I think we'll get started since we have a short time together today. Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Rachel Stoll. I'm the Senior Vice President for Research Programs at the Stimson Center, as well as the Director of our Conventional Defense Program, which seeks to reduce risk and minimize harm associated with the global arms trade. I'm really delighted to welcome you today to our event, 10 Years of Arms Trade Treaty Transparency. As you all know, the Arms Trade Treaty, or ATT, was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2013 as the first legally binding global instrument to regulate the international trade in conventional arms. The treaty not only requires states parties to establish robust national control systems, but also to report annually on their arms transfers. With its legally binding reporting requirements and broad membership, which will reach 117 states parties in early December, the ATT really holds potential to bring greater transparency and thus accountability to the arms trade. Last December, we marked the 10th anniversary of the ATT's entry into force, and this year we mark a decade of annual reporting under the treaty. So today's discussion aims to give us an opportunity to reflect on that decade of progress, the challenges we face, the opportunities to strengthen transparency in the global arms trade, and as many other topics as well. The question we'll really be looking at today is whether the ATT is making a tangible contribution and impact to global arms trade transparency. We at Stimson have been very grateful for many years of partnership on arms trade transparency with the government of the Netherlands. Ambassador Robert Indenbosch, who's Ambassador at Large for Disarmament Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, has been a friend to Stimson and to the larger issue of transparency for many, many years. And it is my honor to turn the floor over to Ambassador Indenbosch for some opening remarks for today's discussion. Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Good morning, Europe, and good afternoon, Europe, and good morning, everybody overseas in the US. My name is Robert Indenbosch, as stated. I'm the permanent representative to the CD and ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the Conference on Disarmament. And it's my pleasure to open today's event with a few words of introduction. And let me start by thanking the Stimson Center for bringing us together for this discussion on arms trade transparency. This annual gathering has become a valuable moment to reflect on how far we have come under the Arms Trade Treaty. In our view, the entry into force of the treaty was a milestone in 2014, marking the moment when the international community came together to set common global standards in an effort to reduce the harm caused by irresponsible and illicit arms transfers. Since the entry into force, the discussions have evolved into a broader conversation about responsible arms transfers, one that connects governments, industry, and civil society. States have improved their licensing systems, strengthened national legislation, and shared information in new and more effective ways. These improvements may sound like minor technical achievements, but they have a major impact. Fewer weapons falling into the wrong hands, and ultimately fewer lives lost. While we can be proud of the progress achieved, we must also acknowledge that there is still work to be done. As such, the title of today's event, Assessing Global Arms Trade Transparency, captures both the challenges and the opportunities before us. The success of the treaty cannot be measured in simple or immediate outcomes. We cannot, in a direct sense, point to a number and say that this many lives were saved because of the ATT. Its impact is often more subtle, but equally important. Transparency has always been at the heart of the ATT, as it provides the means to observe how states are implementing their commitments and to identify areas where improvements may be needed. Furthermore, by ensuring that information is both clear and accessible, we strengthen the ability of all stakeholders to advance the treaty's objectives. Institutions such as the Stimson Center play a vital role in this shared endeavor. They help to highlight trends, increase understanding, and assist states in enhancing the effectiveness of their implementation efforts. In doing so, they contribute to ensuring that arms transfers are conducted responsibly. For the Kingdom of the Netherlands, transparency, therefore, is not a mere box-ticking exercise. It's a core principle of our arms export control policy and an integral part of our broader commitment to a rules-based international order. We believe that being open about what we do builds confidence, both at home and internationally, and ultimately helps prevent misuse of arms that cause human suffering. In that sense, we are proud to be counted among the top countries leading the way in reporting transparency. Now, 10 years after the first reports were submitted, this is an important moment to pause and reflect. The strategic landscape in which the treaty operates has evolved significantly. Emerging technologies, shifting power dynamics, and the growing role of private industry in defense production all raise new questions for transparency and accountability. Against this backdrop, we must ask ourselves, how well are we living up to the promise of transparency? Are the ATT's reporting mechanisms truly building the confidence and accountability they were meant to foster? Or are we still struggling with selective disclosure and reporting fatigue? And perhaps most importantly, how does ATT transparency fit within a broader global framework from the UN Register of Conventional Arms, UNROCA, to newer regional initiatives that promote responsible defense trade? As usual, in August, the new ATT Monitor Report was presented during the meeting of state parties. Unfortunately, the picture we got there is mixed. Reporting rates have steadily declined, and almost half of the state parties have one or more reports outstanding. Consequently, the treaty's ability to provide a clear picture of global arms flows is weakened. And that picture matters, especially in today's complex geopolitical landscape, where the responsible transfer of arms is under more scrutiny than ever. Without regular and reliable reporting, we risk losing one of the treaty's most powerful tools for accountability and trust building at precisely the time it's most needed. Sadly, there are no quick fixes in this regard, but there is a clear path forward. We recognize that some state parties face practical challenges, such as limited administrative capacity, complex reporting requirements, or competing political priorities. Others may have concerns of national security about sharing sensitive information. These challenges are real, but they also highlight why peer learning is so essential. Transparency should not be seen as a burden, but as an investment in trust and the credibility of the treaty. By sharing experiences, building capacity, and encouraging openness, we can strengthen the culture of transparency on which the ATT was built. And I am confident that today's event and the new report it highlights will make an important contribution to this effort. In that regard, I'm pleased to note the panel of distinguished experts from government, civil society, and international institutions before us. They will explore what a decade of ATT reporting has revealed and where the gaps remain, and discuss how we can use these insights to achieve deeper cooperation and stronger reporting in the global arms trade over the next decade. So without further ado, I will hand the floor back to Rachel to kick off the discussion, and I look forward to a productive and engaging conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm really grateful for your personal commitment to this issue and for the Netherlands' commitment not only to my team's work, but also to the common cause of transparency. I think you mentioned Dutch leadership. I think it has been very apparent in these first 10 years of ATT reporting, the commitment that you and your country have shown to this issue, and I'm very grateful. I'm also very grateful to be joined by our distinguished panel today. We have amassed, as the ambassador said, representatives from different sectors interested in this issue. So we have Tom Neist, Policy Officer at the ATT Secretariat. We have Claudia Garcia, who is a Political Affairs Officer at the Conventional Arms Branch of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, or UNODA. And we have Andrea Verasco, Project Lead for the ATT Monitor. So we've covered government, civil society, international institutions in this event, which I'm really proud of. In a moment, I will walk you through some of the key takeaways from Stimson's latest ATT annual reporting analysis, which we are launching today. But then I'll turn the floor over to Tom to share some of his transparency insights from the ATT Secretariat's perspective, followed by Claudia to talk about the relationship between the ATT and the UN Register of Conventional Arms, or UNROCA, and finally to Andrea to hear about the findings in this year's ATT Monitor report and the Monitor's Arms Transfers Dashboard. After all of these presentations, we will open the floor to a Q&A. You have a button at the bottom of your screen that you can enter in your questions throughout the presentations, and we will do our best to get through as many of them as possible after the presentations. So with that, let me start my presentation to talk to you today about the new report that Stimson is launching. As I mentioned, the big question of this event is evaluating whether the ATT has facilitated greater transparency within the arms trade. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder, states parties to the ATT are mandated to provide two types of reports to the ATT Secretariat. They first must submit an initial report on their national control systems and measures undertaken to implement the treaty. We're not talking about that report today. The second type of report, which is what we are talking about in this event, are the annual reports. By 31 May each year, states parties are required to submit an annual report on exports and imports of conventional arms that occurred during the previous calendar year. The first reports were submitted in 2016 on transfers that occurred in 2015, and the latest round of reports that were due this May reported on transfers that occurred during 2024. So the 61 original signatories or states parties of the ATT have now been required to submit a total of 10 annual reports. Next slide, please. Transparency is a great concept, but why is it not only the focus of this event, but such a central element of the ATT, including in Article 1? So, of course, annual reports can deliver valuable information on state compliance with ATT obligations regarding transfer controls. They can enhance visibility into regional and global arms flows. They can assist in detecting potentially destabilizing weapons accumulations, and they can provide a basis to track and identify weapons diversion and illicit arms flows. So in theory, the ATT annual reports have an incredible potential to increase meaningful transparency over the arms trade. But what really matters is not just the words on the paper of the treaty itself, but is the implementation. So are states parties delivering on their transparency commitments? Next slide, please. Stimson's latest report on ATT annual reporting, 10 years of ATT reporting, placing the 2024 reports in context, which was launched today, will help us identify some aspects of arms trade transparency resulting from the ATT. And this report analyzes key trends and reporting approaches over 10 years of annual reporting with a focus on recent trends, some challenges, and good practices of the reports covering states parties arms transfer during the 2024 calendar year. Because we have such a short time today, I'm just going to highlight some large-scale findings. So I encourage you to look more in depth at the report. When you have the chance, you can find the link to the report in the event chat, or you can scan the QR code on the presentation screen. Next slide, please. What we found as regards to compliance and reporting practices present somewhat of a mixed picture. So we're about 2 months after the 2024 report deadline as of October 5th, 2025. 72 of the 113 states parties due to report had submitted their reports. And that's a compliance rate of about 64%. As of this morning, I'm pleased to say that that number is up to 74 reports or 65%. If you look at the top graph on this slide, we can see that the percentage of the due annual reports submitted has decreased nearly every year since 2015. But over the past decade, as the number of states parties has expanded, we started with 61 states parties in 2015 to the 113 that we're required to submit today. Aggregate compliance has also decreased. So methodologically, I should mention that this analysis is based on just the reports submitted as of this past month. So compliance rates are partly higher because people have had more time to submit overdue reports, which is a great practice that we're seeing more and more of. If you look at the number of, in the graph below, you can see the absolute numbers of submissions that has grown with increasing universalization of the ATT. So obviously we have more states parties, so we have more reports, but we've had about somewhere in the 70s for the past several years. Next slide, please. So overall, more than half of ATT states parties are currently in full compliance with their reporting obligations. As of October 5th, when we finished the data for this report, 67 states parties, or 59%, have submitted at least each of their annual reports, and 23 or 20% have submitted at least one, but not all of their annual reports. And about another 20% have never submitted a required annual report. So this is a mandatory obligation. So having 20% of states never having fulfilled their obligation is a troublesome trend. Next slide, please. There's also the opportunity for states to report privately, which means they just submit their reports to be available to the ATT Secretariat and to other ATT states parties. States parties do have insights into the contents of the report, but for those of us doing the analysis of these reporting submissions or looking at larger global arms transfer trends, private reports certainly present a challenge to transparency. We saw in the first 6 years of annual reporting a steady and significant increase in private reporting. You can see in the graph on the slide that the share of private reports grew from 7% to 34% in the first 5 years. But since the submission of the 2021 reports, reporting privately has steadied and is staying around 30% of reports each year. The ATT also explicitly allows states parties to exclude commercially sensitive or national security information from their annual reports. Although for maximum transparency, obviously we prefer that states do not withhold information. It is a great alternative to submitting an entirely private report. Withholding as a metric is even more difficult to measure. We can only tell if a state has withheld information when they specifically indicate that they have done so. But using our analysis, we can estimate that withholding has averaged about 28% of the public reporters and as low as 24% in some years. Next slide, please. Of course, I think we went too far. One slide back, please. I think we're very lucky to have been joined. One slide back, please. Of course, we are quite pleased to be joined by Claudia today, who's going to talk about the relationship between UNROCA and the ATT. For those who don't know, and I'm sure Claudia will get into it, UNROCA was established by the United Nations General Assembly in 1991 and encourages all UN member states to submit voluntary annual reports on arms transfers. There's been an effort over the past couple of years to create synergies between the ATT and UNROCA annual reports to address some of the issues that Ambassador Indenbosch mentioned in his opening remarks about reporting fatigue and reporting burdens, but also to increase transparency and participation in both instruments. And the revised reporting template adopted by the 7th ATT Conference of States Parties in 2021 provided a tick box that authorizes information in submitted ATT reports to be sent to the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs for the completion of their UNROCA report. So I look forward to hearing more from Claudia about that. Next slide, please. It appears as though states parties have gained experience with annual reporting over the past decade, with ATT reporting and transparency trends really beginning to stabilize. So the average number of absolute reports submitted between 2020 and 2023 has consistently remained in the high 70s, and private reporting, which rose significantly between 2015 and 2020, has really plateaued as a percentage of submitted reports. In an increasingly difficult environment for transparency and multilateral cooperation, the ATT community's ability to maintain such trends and to particularly prevent further erosion of reporting norms, I really think should be noted. I think it's a very challenging time for multilateral instruments, and so I'm really pleased to see some consistency in the ATT. However, aggregate reporting compliance rates remain lower than would be expected for a legally mandated treaty obligation. Only 59% of states parties are in full compliance with their annual reporting obligations, and it's diminishing each year. And a lot of states continue to provide incomplete data in their reports, which makes it very difficult to do a full analysis. So at the end of the day, when I think about has the ATT contributed to overall ATT transparency, I'm not sure the answer can be definitively divined, but I think we can all see the potential as well as the significant need to support work in the years ahead to help meet this potential. Next slide, please. Our latest report provides a list of recommendations and improvements that states parties, the ATT Secretariat, the ATT Working Group on Transparency and Reporting, as well as other stakeholders like civil society, can undertake to help better bolster transparency efforts as we move into the second decade of ATT reporting. I would also point to our August report, Understanding ATT Reporting Challenges, Guidance and Recommendations to Strengthen ATT Reporting, for those interested in more granular suggestions of how we can work together to improve reporting. The central recommendation I have that's relevant to all stakeholders is that we need to take a comprehensive look at the successes and the lessons learned from the treaty's first decade of reporting and design a united, concrete, and practical strategy to strengthen reporting in the years ahead. And I look forward to working with you all on those questions today and as we move forward. Thank you. I am going to now turn the floor over to my friend Tom to talk to you all about the Secretariat's role and recommendations for the future. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel, and also for me, good afternoon for those here in Europe, good evening or good morning to the rest. Thank you, Rachel, for giving the Secretariat also the opportunity to talk about our work on reporting. I will first briefly say some words on the progress in annual reporting and then talk about our work to finish off with some reflections on the recommendations in the report that you are releasing today. Now, when you look at the current trends in reporting, I think that we are cautiously optimistic, in fact, especially looking at this most recent reporting cycle. You may remember that when we had the conference in August, we reported that 72 2024 reports were submitted at the time. And when you compare that with how the situation was a year before, when we looked at the 2023 reports, at that time we only had 64, so that was significant progress. And also, when we look at the current moment, we have received now 76 reports. 2 of those are not yet available online, but that is obviously a very positive trend. And when we then look at what we presented at the working group meetings back in February about the previous reporting cycle, at that time we only had 71 reports. So we are actually optimistic that this cycle might be the best ever. You also mentioned already states submitting reports that they hadn't submitted in previous years. That is obviously also a very good trend. And even yesterday, that happened again now with Cameroon, who actually submitted all the reports that they were due. Rachel, you also know, and you mentioned it a little bit, that I also always nuance the decline in the reporting rate a little bit. Yes, it was 87% in 2015, and now we are at about 65%. But that obviously has to do also with the universalization of the treaty. The more states that have joined, the lower the rate has gotten, and that of course also has to do with the fact that the first states that joined the treaty were those who had already an established national control system. They had reporting systems through which this was fairly easy and straightforward for them to report, whilst the newer states parties often they have to start from scratch or at a very low bar when it comes to their control system. So it's much harder to submit their reports, but they are catching up. If you would only look at those initial states parties, the reporting rate would still be 80%. So that is the nuance that we always want to share about that. Now, for these positive trends, as a secretariat, we don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but it does coincide with quite a few initiatives that we have undertaken over the past few years. And of course, the basics of them are sending out reminders to states, conducting a lot of email engagement with states, answering questions and so forth. And that has also been quite targeted. We have really also been contacting states that had submitted recent reports or that had submitted most of their reports if they were lagging behind. We also reached out to states that are new to reporting. And what we also try to do is reach out to states that have submitted reports to the UN register, but not to the ATT. We also have more structural initiatives that are under the umbrella of the Working Group on Transparency and Reporting, or are part of our project that is supported by the European Union. Under the Working Group, a lot of people will know our Regional Reporting Champions initiative, where we try to empower states in the region to help those with reporting challenges in their region. But more recently, if you would look at the final report of the latest conference, the CSP11, you will see that there are lots of elements coming out of the Working Group on Transparency and Reporting. It goes from A to K this time, and it includes, for example, a mandate to the Secretariat to optimize the format and the provision of ATT reporting tools, and also a request to assess the use of the online reporting tool as well as the information exchange platform. So those are things that we are working on or are going to work on. Under our EU project, we have in fact already had some quite important deliverables. We've conducted profound practical regional reporting workshops over the past few years that have led to very concrete results. States submitting reports or asking for concrete assistance. And examples of that would be Bahamas and Guyana, who have now submitted their first reports. We also launched a reporting manual for annual reporting that we would want to become the standard for all assistance providers to use, but also for states to draft their own manual. And in that sense, we had a very good experience with Cameroon, who not only they submitted their reports, but they also concluded a project under the Voluntary Trust Fund, drafting a national manual with the help of CIPRI, where they actually used the ATT Secretariat's reporting manual as a bit of a blueprint. Now, at the same time, colleagues there are working to finalize this current EU project with, for reporting, also some easy-to-use outreach tools, self-learning, focused training sessions, and so forth. But while we are finalizing that, the successor of this project is also about to be adopted, and that will include, again, quite a few activities on reporting. And we have basically tried to make this complementary with what is happening in the working group on transparency and reporting, so that we can use the resources from the EU project in line with the priorities of the ATT process itself. And that applies, for example, to the optimization of our support tools. What we also want to focus on is targeted support to individual states, both by the Secretariat ourselves, but also by facilitating projects between others that want to offer assistance and then states needing it. And that will then involve also the ATT needs and resources matching database that is on our website now already. We will talk more about this when we have the working group meetings in March. You can see with these initiatives, we have actually already covered quite a few of the recommendations in the report, especially when it comes to outreach and optimizing our tools. Some other of the recommendations in there, they might be a bit more challenging as they require capacity and resources, or they also require states to take up responsibilities or propose measures within the ATT process. And concerning the former, you know, anything to do with IT is very costly and also very slow. But as I mentioned already before, we have started to work on that already. Regarding the latter, obviously, we also need to take into account that the Secretariat cannot make unilateral decisions to publicly disclose or aggregate information about states and their reporting that they have not agreed to. And for example, a recommendation to publish aggregated data from private submission, even if anonymized, that would first require a discussion in the process and a decision of states parties. And the same would apply to, for example, a consolidated list of reporting focal points. Of course, as you know, for those who report publicly, the focal point is also mentioned in their reports. So I think that if you have inquiries about reports, that you can always contact those people. I also know that a related recommendation, which I found very good, about reporting focal points, sharing information, and the need to establish a forum for that. Obviously, we already have now in our restricted area on the website an information exchange platform to which also these reporting focal points have access. Unfortunately, that hasn't been used, and so part of the assessment of that information exchange platform also will be this aspect of transparency and reporting. Now, our current focus is obviously on getting states to report and to see how that can be facilitated. And that is also why we like the reference to the regional reporting champions in the report, because we also find that regional approach very important, because states in the same region, they often better understand the challenges that their neighbors are facing. And also the bar to provide support or to get support might be a bit lower. And that's why we did these regional workshops. That is also why we can support further regional initiatives, as long as it is within our resources and our capacities, of course. I do want to say that the Secretariat obviously doesn't always need to be in the driver's seats. There's also a responsibility for those who need support and those willing to offer it. And that's why we always keep on encouraging the use of the voluntary trust fund and more recently the matching database for such things. Finally, I've also noted the reference to collaboration with other instruments, and I will let Claudia talk about the success of our collaboration for the UN Register. But of course, as the Secretariat, we are particularly interested in any leverage that can boost ATT reporting and bring in state parties that have not reported to us. With that, I hope that the common thread through my talk was clear. We are taking many initiatives to facilitate reporting compliance, but it's very much a collaborative effort that also requires concrete commitments from others. In the first place, obviously, the states with reporting areas, but also those who can support states. Now, all in all, I think that we are on a good path, and I certainly look forward to talk more about this, and that will be at the latest in our March meeting. Thank you very much, and back to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Tom. I'm grateful for your commitment to this work. Been a long champion of this, of transparency and of ensuring that the Secretariat gets it right. And I think you talked about some of the really important innovations that the Secretariat has undertook. And I just want to put in a plea for the matching resources to allow you to do that work because it is so central and there is such a reliance on the Secretariat to be able to do so many of those activities that you described. I think it's a very logical transition now to give the floor to Claudia from UNODA to talk about this relationship between the ATT and the UN Register. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, Ambassador Inden Bosch, dear colleagues. First of all, I wish to express my appreciation to Stimson Center for inviting me to participate in this event and to discuss global arms trade transparency. As Rachel has noted, the ATT and the UN Register of Conventional Arms share a common purpose in bringing transparency to the area of the international arms trade. I will focus my presentation on the importance of the UN Register of Conventional Arms, UNROCA, as a transparency tool and highlight the benefits of reporting and creating synergies with other instruments, primarily the ATT. So for more than 3 decades, the UN Register of Conventional Arms has served as a global transparency and confidence building tool designed to prevent the excessive and destabilizing accumulation of conventional weapons, promote stability, and strengthen regional and international peace and security. The alarming trend in the global arms trade, which reflect escalating tensions within the international security landscape, highlights the continued relevance of the register and the imperative need to adapt it to emerging technological advancements. The register provides an opportunity for all UN member states to share national information on exports and imports of 7 categories of major conventional arms. This consists of collecting, collating, and submitting information under the 7+1 formula, which includes the 7 categories of major conventional weapons and also small arms and light weapons. States are also invited to provide data on military holdings, procurement through national production, and relevant national policies. If no conventional weapons were imported or exported and no changes occurred during the reporting period on military holdings, procurement through national production, and relevant national policies, states can submit a nil return. Reporting under UNROCA is voluntary, but it can help build trust among states, the lack of which often contributes to excessive or destabilizing accumulation of arms. In a sense, UNROCA serves as a tool for early warning and preventive diplomacy. Openness about armaments may encourage restraint in the transfer or production of arms. Transparency by an exporting or importing country can be a strong signal that it has nothing to hide in its export or import policy, and it is open to scrutiny over its arms transfers practices. Transparency is important for those countries that are large-scale arms traders, as it is for those importing or exporting few or nothing at all. UNROCA has also served as a point of reference for regional and international confidence-building mechanisms, as well as for arms transfer and export control instruments. Despite the low reporting trends observed over the past years, UNROCA still captures about 90% of the global arms trade because major arms exporting countries participate in this instrument more regularly. UNROCA has also inspired other international and regional instruments that seek to achieve the same objective or related export controls. These include, for example, the Inter-American Convention on Transparency in Conventional Weapons Acquisitions, and of course, the Arms Trade Treaty. The fact that UNROCA influenced the Arms Trade Treaty is evidenced by the fact that the scope and annual reporting provisions of this treaty mirror that of UNROCA, the 7+1 formula, that is 7 categories of major conventional arms, plus small arms and light weapons. To ensure that UNROCA is fit for purpose, the register has been reviewed every 3 years since 1994 to allow it to adapt to changing security environment and advances in technology. In 2024 and 2025, a group of 19 governmental experts from all regions met for 3 weeks between December and May to review the continued relevance and operation of UNROCA with the goal of formulating recommendations on how to improve this instrument. The 2024-2025 UNROCA GGE discussed factors affecting the level of participation in the register and proposed measures to promote participation. The GGE agreed on a list of benefits of participating in the register that will be a useful tool for building trust and confidence among member states. In addition, the GGE reviewed proposals concerning the continuing operation of the register and the potential expansion of its scope, among other issues. And also, as Rachel has mentioned, UNROCA and ATT secretariats initiated a collaborative arrangement to ease states' reporting burden in the context of Article 13.3 of the ATT, by which states parties shall submit annual reports to the ATT Secretariat on the transfers of 8 categories of conventional weapons. ATT states parties have agreed to share on a voluntary basis their submissions with UNROCA. Accordingly, the 7th Conference of States Parties to the Arms Trade Treaty, held in 2021, endorsed a revised annual reporting template for use by states parties for their annual reports on exports and imports of conventional arms. The ATT reporting template introduced the option for states parties to tick a box to indicate that UNODA could use relevant information in the annual report as the basis for a submission to UNROCA. This report sharing arrangement has substantially increased the number of submissions to UNROCA. And let me share my screen now. Can you see my screen? No? Okay. Can you see it now? Perfect. Okay, so as you can see in this slide, during the most recent UNROCA reporting cycle for 2025, 72 reports received. We received 72 reports. 39 were submitted through the ATT UNROCA information sharing arrangement, which represents 54% of the total submissions. This number is almost identical to the previous reporting cycle. Of the 71 reports submitted, 39 were transmitted by the ATT Secretariat to UNODA. This represents 55% of the total submissions received in 2024 for UNROCA. To date, we have received a total of 158 submissions from the ATT Secretariat from as early as 2015. And it is worth noting that some states have agreed to share information from their ATT annual reports with UNROCA even for years before the current information sharing arrangement existed. The provisions of the ATT annual reports to the register has had an impact on the level of reporting from regions that had low numbers of submissions. For example, let me show this slide. As you can see here, of the UNROCA annual reports we received in 2025 from Latin America and the Caribbean, more than 80% were received through the ATT. The ATT also transmitted more than 60% of submissions from Africa and 33% of the submissions from Asia Pacific. This demonstrates the importance of the information sharing arrangement between ATT and UNODA. However, the Secretariat continues to work on improving these numbers, as the 72 reports received for the 2025 reporting cycle represent only 37 of the UN member states. The 2024-2025 UNROCA group of governmental experts identify several factors that may hinder member states' participation in UNROCA. For example, a lack of awareness of the register and its purpose, a lack of continuity of government officials involved in preparing register submissions, a lack of capacity, an increasing reporting burden, national and regional security challenges, the classification of data as sensitive information in national legislation and regulations, the inclusion or exclusion of certain types of weapons, such as small arms and light weapons, a lack of political will in some cases, among other reasons. Some of these factors may also present difficulties for ATT state parties as they endeavor to meet their reporting obligations. To address this situation, UNODA has taken some measures. For example, in partnership with UNIDIR, we organize virtual training workshops for national points of contacts on preparing submissions for the register. And for the first time this year, these workshops were offered in Spanish and English and also French. And these workshops have contributed to raising awareness about the importance of transparency in armaments and building states' reporting capacity. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. And of course, we look forward to continuing the report. We continue open to discuss synergies with the ATT Secretariat in advancing arms trade transparency with a view to strengthening cooperation, reporting, and promoting shared objectives. And we also welcome the opportunity to reflect on Stimson Center's comprehensive analysis, which I'm sure it provides valuable insights to inform future deliberations and enhance the effectiveness of transparency measures. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Claudia. I think the importance of the synergies, the ways in which the UN Register and the ATT annual reports can work together to give us a global picture of arms trade, arms transfers around the world is really important. And I thank you for your diligence in identifying ways in which we can work together. Last but certainly not least, my friend Andrea, to share with us more about the ATT monitor. Andrea.
Thank you, Rachel. I hope you can all see my screen. Perfect. So thank you very much. I'm aware of time, so I will try to get fast to the main points of my presentation to leave a few minutes at the end. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Andrea Varisco. I'm the ATT Monitor project lead. Thank you, Ambassador Indenbosch, for the support that your country has always given to transparency. Since the topic of today is 10 years of Arms Trade Treaty transparency, let me first introduce the work of the ATT Monitor. The ATT Monitor is a project, independent project of control arms that was established 10 years ago and became with time the de facto international monitoring mechanism for the ATT. Through our work on annual reports, we looked at more than 475 public annual reports and collected more than 10 years of information on reporting. And we have different research products and outputs, and today I will focus only on 3 of them, and through them I will explain a bit our data and our methodology through which we monitor transparency trends over time. First, our first product is the ATT Monitor Annual Report. It's our flagship product. Usually, we launch it every August at the Conference of State Parties. Now, there's a small methodological point that when we look at annual reports, we put as 1st February our deadline. And that's why some of the numbers you will see here are a bit different from the ones that Rachel just presented and Tom also. So in the reports, we always have a thematic chapter, a chapter that looks at what happened in the ATT cycle in the precedent year, and then we have one chapter that analyzes in depth the annual reports of the previous year. So for this year, we're 2023, and another chapter that provides a preliminary review. So how do we look at reports? What is our methodology? We have 3 main categories of analysis and different criteria under each of them. The first is compliance with Article 13.3. And last year, again, as of 1st of February, we had 69 state parties, of which 37 were fully compliant, meaning that they also had reported on time by the deadline of 31st of May. Now, I would like to, I know that the chart on the right has higher numbers now, and this is very positive. I would like to provide a slightly different reading, also taking into account what Rachel said and one question that I saw that arrived. So if we consider next year, we will have for 2023 at least 77 states, and for 2024 at least 76. So those numbers in the red bars will be over 70, which means that, as Tom was saying, these are slightly positive improvement and developments, because we had more than 70 annual reports for the last 7 years. And I looked at who these states are a few days ago, 11th of November. So we had 69 states that submitted all their reports. So I would say a critical mass of 61% of states that submitted all their reports. And then, as Rachel was saying, 20% of states that never reported, and the 21 that didn't report regularly. So I will say, in responding also to a question, that it's up to this kind of assistance that is provided to try to understand for those 19% what are the issues that emerge, maybe a change of government, maybe a change of personnel, etc. And for the other, what are the challenges that hinder their participation in reporting. If I move to the next set of categories, is what we call meaningfully transparent annual reports. Here we look at data like aggregation of importers and exporters, indication if the transfers were authorized or actual, etc. And as of 1st of February this year, we had 27 states, which is the lowest level. Again, I tried to provide a different reading of this chart. I looked at all those states that in the different years were in those red bars, and we have 8 to 10 that consistently were meaningfully transparent in their reporting, and Netherlands is one of them, so congratulations to them. I see it as a more positive, because that means that every year there are 15 to 20 or even more states that have the potential to provide a meaningfully transparent report, or have done so in the past, so that they can provide more information. So with our analysis, when we go and disaggregate the different criteria that we look at in these second categories, these are the two I marked, those that are slightly more problematic, or at least they've proven to be more problematic in the last year. So aggregation for importers and exporters, and indication of whether transfers are authorized or actual. The third set of criteria is for those states that have reached what we call the higher standard of transparency. So if they have provided comments, descriptions, etc., or they indicated that they withdrew information. An important point here is that 48 state parties indicated that they indicated whether they had withdrawn information or not, and of those, 18 indicated that they withdrew some of the information, withheld some information. In Belgium, Canada, Netherlands, and Sweden clearly indicated the type of information that was withheld. So what happens when we put all those categories together? We look at what are every year. We look at what resulted as the most transparent reports. So those that achieved the best in all these three categories. And we had 14 state parties last year, of which Canada and Peru demonstrated to be those aiming at a higher standard of transparency. In our ATT Monitor annual report, we have a map where we map the different behavior or the different level of different states. So I encourage you to look at it. The second product that I would like to talk to very briefly is the country profiles. Since 2016, every year we provide annual analysis of states parties' practices. For those state parties, of course, that submitted publicly available ATT annual reports. What we look at here, we look at basic metrics, but also a transfer summary in terms of exports and imports, comparable across countries, areas of good practices and areas of improvement, with the goal to improve reporting practices of states and assist or indicating some areas where a better transparency could be achieved. What we look at, for instance, in good practices is if countries differentiate between actual and authorized transfers, if they report under voluntary categories, those criteria that we were aggregating also in our annual analysis. And what we look at for room for improvement is if states maybe aggregate too much information, so it's not easy to understand who the trading partner was for a specific transfer, if they do not provide information on importing and exporting states, or they don't specify if transfers are authorized or actual. Again, I encourage you to look at those country profiles in our website and in our publication. And please get back to us with some feedback, because the aim is to improve reporting transparency. And then finally, very briefly, I just want to mention that we launched last year at this event the Arms Transfer Dashboard. We also presented it in the working group this year, and is available online, is available on our website. And we just updated it with the data from 2023 that I've just presented. In the dashboard, you can look at summaries for specific categories of arms, of transfers, export, imports, etc. Look at exports and imports for specific countries, of course, those that have reported publicly to the ATT, or also having an overview of the transfers. And with that, I think we still have a couple of minutes in the webinar, so I conclude here. If any of you has any feedback, please get back to me with further questions. And if any of you have ever used our tools, please provide some feedback through our survey that helps us improve. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Andrea. And as always, we have more information than we have time for to share in an hour event, which I'm very pleased that we have such a robust set of conversations that we can have on this topic. There were several questions in the chat about percentages and which countries haven't reported. If I could draw your attention to the Arms Trade Treaty Secretariat's website, which Tom has put links in the chat, but it's www.thearmstradeTreaty.org. You will be able to find in the reporting section all of the data about who has reported, what their reports look like if they are public, because it is a very useful resource full of all of that information, as well as all of the training that we have. I am afraid that we are out of time, and so we will have to pick this conversation up at a later date. But please join me in thanking our speakers today for their excellent interventions, to Ambassador Indenbosch personally, as well as the government of the Netherlands for their support, the ATT Secretariat, and Tom, who have done a tremendous job presenting this information and helping states in innovative ways to be able to fulfill their obligations, and to Claudia and UNODA for their enhanced work on the UN Register and finding those synergies to contribute to greater transparency in the arms trade. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you on this screen again soon for further conversations about the ATT.